Ashe. Ashe is the word, the source of I and I ancestors. Ashe is the source that holds all things together. Ashe is I source, I shield, and I protector. Ashe is I source, I guide, and I provider. Ashe is I source, and that is why I am not black. Ashe is I source, I cannot be lack. Ashe is I source, I light and I deliverer. Ashe is I source, I healer and I teacher. Ashe is I source, I leader and I spiritual fire. Ashe is I source, I strength. Each day I be more and more. Ashe is I source, I spiritual comforter. Each day I be more stronger. Ashe is I sustainer. Each day my life is filled with more pleasure. Ashe walk with I to much green and greener pastures. Ashe walk with I beside some very cold and deadly waters. Ashe walk I through the valley of blackness and under the shadow of blackness. And so I fear no evil, or what the devils may try to do. For it's Ashe I say. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe I say to you all, my highly enriched melanin, my highly enriched carbon skin brothers and sisters, my fellow Africans, Mother Earth's original, Mother Earth's natural, native and organic humans the world over. And welcome back one and all to this another perspective with I, the Mystic Philosopher. It's high time for reason and for reasoning. As it is my custom to do, please let me take this opportunity right here and now and say goodwill to all those of you that have given, and all those of you that may give, and all those of you that will give of your very limited resources, also known as your very precious time to join in, to watch and listen to this video broadcast and podcast. Goodwill to all those of you that take time out to subscribe to this my YouTube channel called The Right Number, and to my blog post at themysticp.com. Goodwill to all those of you that may or will take time out to donate and to support what I'm doing, and especially goodwill to all those that have and that may and that will purchase my music and messages in songs. Goodwill to all those of you that may or that will take time out to participate in the discussions, to critique and to write comments. Goodwill to all those of you that may or that will intelligently, informatively, and respectfully rebut with the honest intent of highlighting or correcting any and all possible statements or information that you may perceive to be erroneous or misleading, or that you can or that you may prove to be incorrect and misleading. And goodwill to all those of you that will share your own perspectives on any of the topics that are covered in this or any series of lecture presentations by I, the Mystic Philosopher. Welcome, thank you, and goodwill to you all. The topic of this series of lecture presentation is the art of living well, another perspective and interpretation of Desiderata. And today's lecture is titled The Art of Living Well, Another Perspective and Interpretation of Desiderata, Part 3. Now, if you haven't yet watched or listened to Part 1, followed by Part 1A, and Part 2, followed by Part 2A, and in that sequential order, I strongly suggest that you please do so before you continue watching or listening to this Part 3, or any other parts in this series that you might just accidentally come across or someone may recommend. At the end of Part 2, I ask that you please join me in Part 3 for the continuation and for much more detailed expressions on the topic, the art of living well, another perspective and interpretation of Desiderata, which I had already prepared. So, in Part 2 of this analysis, my interpretation and my perspective of Desiderata, I think I have clearly answered the following 12 or more questions. Namely, question 1, what is Desiderata? That was in Part 2. I answered these questions. 1, what is Desiderata? 2, and what does the word Desiderata actually means? 3, and what are the things that are most desired in the world today? 4, I answered the question, who is Max Ehrmann? And 5, what is a poem? 6, what is a prose poem? Question 7, what is philosophy? Question 8, who is a philosopher? Question 9, where is Desiderata telling us to go? Question 10, what is the real world? And question 11, what is the meaning and definition of the word noise and haste? And question 12, I answered and explained and give multiple examples of what is really and truly meant by noise and haste. Or, in all practicality, what does noise and haste truly represent? At the end of Part 1, by saying that, assuming that the author of Desiderata, Max Ehrmann, had written Desiderata, for his daughter, as is alleged by at least one commentator that I have read, that as a good father and as a wise father, he would not let her, his daughter, go, or he would not tell her to go into the world and among all the dangers of this world without first properly preparing her to do so. In fact, I think that logic and common sense alone should tell us that a good and wise father or a good and wise parent would not tell her or encourage her or encourage his child to go by faith alone, to go in the name of his or her God alone, or to go in the name of his or her religion or tradition alone, to go out in the real world and among all the dangers, the toil and the snares, aka the noise and haste of this world. A good and wise father or a good and wise parent would not do so without first preparing her or preparing his or her child to go. On the other hand, assuming that Max Ehrmann had intentionally wrote Desiderata for the benefit of all those of us independent thinkers and truth seekers that may seek and find it, then he or it, Desiderata, would not be telling us to go and face this world without first properly preparing us and telling us how to do so. For example, a good and wise father or a good and wise parent would not be telling his or her son or daughter to go and apply for a job in the world if and when he knows that his son or his daughter was not educated enough, was not trained enough, was not qualified enough, was not prepared enough, or simply was not competent enough to handle the job. The army, as an example, the army or the military for a state or for a country would not or should not send recruits that are not yet trained and become qualified as soldiers to fight on the battlefield or to fight in a war and expect them to be victorious. That would be known as sending them to commit suicide or to have them killed. That would simply be disastrous. So a good father or parent would not send his or her child or his children to dwell among the sharks of this world, to dwell among the iniquity workers, the unscrupulous schemers and scammers, the rapists, the pedophiles, the kidnappers, the child molesters, the human traffickers, the human organ harvesters, the stone cold, heartless and unscrupulous businessmen and businesswomen, the cruel boss or bosses, the capitalists and exploiters, the political and religious cons and prostitutes, among the vicious and unconscionable money lovers, bankers and money changers, the vicious and unscrupulous human piranhas, simply put, the devils that are also known and are also described as the noise and haste of this world. A good father or a good parent would not send his or her children or his or her child unprepared to dwell among these evils, these devils, and sensibly expect that he or she or that they would survive and be successful, let alone that he, she, or they would be happy. In other words, from my perspective, Desiderata is preparing us, or at the very least, Desiderata is helping to prepare all of us that will read it and understand it to go and knowingly face the world. And so before you go, or before we go and face this, the real world, we must first, or they must first, acquire knowledge and understanding so that they, or so that we, may be able to exercise wise judgment. Now, knowing the truth and the fact of what is really meant by noise and haste, the question that one must ask oneself, or the questions that we must ask, are as follows. And go how? Or how should I go? Or how do we go and face the world with all the aforementioned description of noise and haste? And the answer that Desiderata provides is, here is how you should go. Here is how you must go. Go placidly. It bluntly and authoritatively gave us the answer, or at the very least, it gave us an answer. Go placidly. Now please note that the Desiderata did not say go, or the author of Desiderata, the Max Ehrman, did not say go amidst the noise and haste, or get up and go amid the noise and haste. But it specifically say that she, assuming that it was written for his daughter, or we should and must go placidly. That to me is not just an answer, but it is also a command. And what does the word placidly mean? Placidly, and by extension, or rather, placid and by extension, placidly, means and is defined as quiet, serene, calm, and gentle. Placid also means and is defined as a person or an animal that does not get upset, angry, or excited easily. Or if you prefer, placid means a person or an animal that is not easily provoked. But I ask that you please note very carefully that this does not say, and nor does it mean that a placid person or a placid animal, or a person or animal that is placid, or a person or an animal that is being placid does not, cannot, or will not get upset, or will not get angry or excited. Not at all. Placid does not mean, or in the least imply, that one is dead, or that one must behave as if one is dead, or as if one is hypnotized, tranquilized, or unconscious, or comatose. You name it. For as my beloved and late mom used to say, quote, provocation make dummy talk, or provocation will make a dumb man or a dumb woman talk. And if or when you provoke a dumb person, or a dumb man or a dumb woman, and make them talk, it could spell very serious trouble for you. Secondly, placid and by extension, placidly, does not mean stupid, idiotic, foolish, etc. Thus one should interpret this to mean go stupidly, go idiotically, go foolishly, etc. into the world. To be placid or to go placidly does not mean that you suspend your basic human intelligence, suspend logic, reasoning, or reason, and basic common sense, and thus become stupid and thereby allow all sort of liberty to be taken of you. I have seen and personally known of a lot of people, my own people, some of whom have read this same poem, Desiderata, daily, and in the name of their religion and religious practices and religious beliefs, they become even more stupid instead of becoming placid. They somehow directly or indirectly interpret the word placid to mean stupid, and for them to act and behave stupidly. I have seen and observed people, some are of my own melanin aka African people, that often after reading the Desiderata turn around and try to correlate it with quotes from the Christian Holy Bible, which alleges that the man or the character called Jesus Christ, some say Yahushua Mashiach, is alleged to have said, and I quote from the book of Matthew 5:38 to verse 40, and I quote, "You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you Do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well, unquote. To which I say to them, are you kidding me? No wonder these people call themselves sheep and have others call them sheep and identify themselves as sheep. For among the animal kingdom, only a sheep that would and can be that docile and downright stupid. The evidence will show that even a jackass, a dumb jackass, aka a donkey, will resist and would resist an evil person, an evil handler, an abuser. Even a jackass, aka a donkey, will kick or even bite an abuser if and when it is being provoked, if or when it is being abused and mistreated. To be placid or to go placidly does not mean that you automatically become stupid to the point that you allow someone to become brave enough and confident enough to take the liberty and box you, or as we would say in Jamaica, clat you, or to slap you on your cheek, possibly breaking your jawbone, and then like a dumb docile sheep, you submissively turn the other cheek and allow them to box you again and thereby break the other jaw. Because you believe the Bible says so, or because the Bible says so, or you believe that this character or this man called Jesus Christ says so, or because your religion says so. Not at all. And I simply don't care who may have said it or who may have wrote these nonsense. But I, the Mystic Philosopher, ain't going to willfully, irresistibly, and submissively subject myself to such verbal nonsense and physical abuse. Quote again, not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well, unquote. That to me is beyond total insanity. To be placid does not mean that you should willfully allow people to subjugate you, to humiliate you, to dehumanize you, to push you around, or to trample all over you. That is not being placid. That is being stupid, period. And full stop. Therefore, go placidly means go quietly, go serenely, go calmly, go gently, and above all, go wisely amidst the noise and haste. Go quietly, serenely, calmly, gently, and above all, go wisely in the middle of the noise and the haste, which by now you know what is meant by the noise and haste, and what noise and haste in this world truly represents. Now, having explained this fact, having explained this fact, the subsequent question one might ask is this: a mystic philosopher, how is that realistic? How can one go quietly, serenely, calmly, gently, peacefully, and wisely amidst the noise and haste? Or how can one go quietly, serenely, calmly, gently, peacefully, and wisely in the middle of the noise and haste, in the middle of the violent and extremely vicious battlefield of life, and expect to survive? Well, from my perspective, it first requires the application of what is known as, or what I refer to as, the 6 P's. Prior proper planning or prior proper preparation. prevents poor performance. Meaning, before you go, you must prepare yourself. Before you go, you must prepare mentally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, educationally, emotionally, and so forth. And the same principles applies to our children. Before we send them out into the world, or before we allow them to go out into the world, we must prepare them mentally, physically, intellectually, spiritually, educationally, emotionally, and otherwise. And from my perspective, that is why, by our modern nature's laws and natural principles, we, the earth's organic human parents, are naturally, inherently, and morally obligated to our children, or more correctly, to our offspring, to nurture and protect them, to foster in them moral values, virtues, and good and natural character. And the same is true as it relates to the system's laws and statutes. We, the subjects, or we, the citizens, the system's slaves, are obligated to our offspring to nurture and protect them, to foster in them moral values, virtues, obedience, and character, so that they too will grow up and be good, obedient, and productive citizens, or good, obedient, and productive subjects, or more correctly, slaves. And thus, from a young age, we elders were taught the old saying, and I quote, aka the Proverbs, and I quote, "Train up a child in the way that he or she should grow. And when he or she is old, he or she will not depart from it." Or, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. That is from the Proverbs 22 and verse 6. Now, for your information, and just to set the record straight on this that I honestly consider to be a very, very important point, and one that most of us are ignorant to, and one that is often overlooked and seriously taken for granted. From the Mystic Philosopher's perspective, in this system and its reality, and for all intents and purposes, the evidence shows, and the evidence will no doubt continue to show, that the little people that come from us, or to be even more correctly, the little people that ascended from us, that we call our babies, our infants, our children, and that they in turn called us their parents, their mothers and fathers, etc., are not ours. They don't belong to us. Whenever we call them our children, or say that they are our children, and when we say and make statements like my baby, my child, my children, my son or my daughter, etc., we are not saying or making statements of fact. We are simply not speaking the proven truth. And being a parent, or being called a parent, does not mean that the child or the children that we are parenting belong to us. Because first and foremost, it is the system, aka the government, the state, the mind controllers and the slave masters, etc., in accordance with its laws, that determine whether or not we are parent, or to be more accurate, legal parent. And a parent, by lawful definition, is a lawful father or a lawful mother of a person, and not necessarily the child's or the person's natural ancestors or progenitors. And even though we are legally obligated by the system and its laws to nurture, protect, and provide for them, the fact is that they are not ours. And even though the evidence may show and prove that they have our DNA, the facts are that they are not ours. In reality, and for all practicality, they don't belong to us. And nor do we own them. The fact is that they are owned by and they belong to the system, the government, the state. Like us, their parents, they are named by the system. And after our slave masters, the system. And regardless of how we may love and cherish them, and may even sacrifice our own lives, our own happiness, and our life's goals and ambitions to care for them and invest in them. Our life, which again, life equal our time in them, the fact is that they are not ours. We are just what is called their legal custodian or their legal guardian, aka their legal caregivers. Meaning the government, the system has granted us legal custody of them. Bluntly put, we are all livestock on the system's farm, aka the slaves, that are the slave plantation, also known as the workforce. In reality, we are all just subjects and slaves in the system, to the system and for the system. Or if you prefer the euphemism, we are all subjects and servants in the system, to the system and for the system, which is our real and true controllers and slave masters. And for those of us who study, know and understand the system well enough, know and understand that slaves do not and slaves cannot own anything, let alone own someone. So the little ones that spring and sprung from us are in reality our offspring, or if you prefer, our offsprung. In reality, we are no different from an animal on the master's farm, giving birth to its young, and the farmer deciding what should become of the young ones that the animal gives birth to. It is now the possession of the farmer. Example, when a mother cow gives birth to its calf or its young, it is the farmer who now owns the calf or the young and will determine its fate. And when a woman gives birth to a child, it is the government, aka the state, that now owns that child and will determine his or her fate. However, this is a topic that I have dealt with and spoke about in much more detail elsewhere. So again, let me quote, train up a child in the way that he or she should go. And when he or she is old, he or she will not depart from it. Or, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. Unquote. From my perspective, and as I have mentioned earlier, that this statement is not entirely correct or entirely true. In fact, at the best, it might be only half truth or half truth. I personally think that it would be far more fair, far more true and realistic if it states that we should, and again I quote while modifying it, train up a child in the way that he or she should go. And when he or she is old, he or she may not depart from it. Or direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they may not leave it. Activated common sense coupled with my own personal and very painful life experiences have shown and proven that under no circumstances can we, or under no circumstances should we, as caregivers and legal custodians of our master's properties, predict, let alone affirm, that the child or the children that we have raised or is raising, or that the children that we have trained or is training and have instilled or are instilling our moral, ancestral, historical, traditional, and cultural values will not depart from them. That he or she or they will not depart from the life's lessons that we have or that we are sometimes painstakingly taught them or is teaching them, and the way that we have raised them, or from the right path on which we have directed them or is directing them. In fact, like myself, some of us, the system's children, legal custodians that are called parents, may admit and tell you that our biggest failure and disappointment in life, and sometimes our biggest embarrassment in life, are the children that we have raised. Some of us will, or some of us may tell you that not only have they, meaning the children, deliberately strayed and abandoned our ancestral path, not only have they turned against us and hate us, their legal guardian, aka their parents, but that some have committed what I, the Mystic Philosopher, perceived to be the unpardonable and unforgivable sin, or the unpardonable and unforgivable error. That is, they have grieved the spirits. That is, they have brought great shame, dishonor, and disgrace upon our most honorable African ancestors, their ancestral source, their ancestral spirits, their ancestral gods and goddesses, and that they have brought great shame, dishonor, and disgrace upon their ancestors' names by deliberately and intentionally siding, mixing, cohabiting, marrying, and sleeping with the wicked and abominable seeds, the descendants of their ancestors, slave masters, and by extension, our enemies, the enemies that they were taught and know of a fact that for over 6,000 years are trying to exterminate us, melanin people, the Earth's original and organic humans, from off this, our planet and Mother Earth. So from my perspective, the correct statement, or the fair and correct statement, should read and must be that we must train them properly so that when they grow older, they may not depart from the moral values, the virtues and virtuous qualities, the obedient slave characteristics that we the parents, or we their parents, have passed on to them and have instilled in them. Now, if this is not the case, meaning if I am not right, and therefore the original statement, the original command, the original proverb, as written in the Adamic Race History and Holy Book, aka the Christian Holy Bible, stands, and I quote again, as it is in the book: train up a child in the way that he or she should go, and when he or she is old, he or she may not depart, or rather will not depart from it. Or direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. Unquote. If that stands, if that is unchanged, or stands or unchanged, unmodified, then we must also logically agree and conclude that if or when the children fail, that it is us that fail them, and that it is us parents that failed as well, and not the children. And that is why in some states and under certain circumstances, a parent or the children, or rather, a parent or the parents of a child or children can be held liable and are held legally responsible for the crimes or wrongs that are committed by a child or by the children that they are parenting. That is also why, according to the system's laws, we as parents are legally responsible for them and legally obligated to them from infant to the age of 18, and in some countries, as parents, we are legally responsible for them until the age of 21. By that age, they are expected to have a very solid foundation in morality, good moral values and virtuous qualities, in obedience to the laws of the land, and by then they should and must learn how to be good slaves like their parents, and at the very least have a high school education and their own plan for their own life's success in the system of slavery, aka the workforce. So with this knowledge and understanding of the fact that our offspring, that we call our children, really and truly belong to the system, aka belongs to our slave masters, our government, the state, that they are not ours, that we do not own them, and that we are just their legal custodian, their legal caregivers, aka their legal parents, and that we are only raising them, taking care of them to replace us in the system as good, young, decent, productive, loyal, and obedient subjects and slaves. Now that we know and understand these facts, and that there is very little, if at all, anything that we can do about it, for, as the saying goes, as so the thing said, let us therefore as parents continue to do our job of raising them as our masters requires of us to do. And let us continue to do it to the best of our ability. And what better way to do it, or to do so, than for us to continue to believe and pretend that we are not slaves, that we are not, that we are all free. Continue to believe that we are all free humans within the system, and that they, our offspring, are in reality our children. According to children psychologists and other experts in the field of child rearing and other studies as well, and I quote, the early years, especially the first 3 years of life, are very important for building the baby's brain. A child's brain develops rapidly during the first 5 years of life, especially the first 3 years. It is a time of rapid cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and motor development, unquote. So from this we can see that between the age of 3 and 5, a child is very impressionable, meaning they are most easily influenced by other people, their environment, and especially us, their parents. And it is from then, the early years of a child's life, that we as parents must endeavor and should endeavor to instill in them the good moral values and virtuous qualities with which they must go, and by which they must go into the world amidst the noise and haste. The moral values and virtuous qualities by which they must go and will go, and not only will they survive, overcome, find happiness and success amidst the noise and haste, but they will also help make this world a better place for all of humanity to live in full joy. From my perspective, the moment we as parents miss out on instilling the right moral values into the minds of a child, or into the mind of a child, or into the mind of our children, which we see that according to the science, that it is between the ages of 3 and 5 years old, or even between the ages of 3 and 7 years old, then there is a high probability that all hope is gone and that they will be lost forever. Meaning that they might not, or that they will not turn out to be good, virtuous, and obedient subjects, citizens, servants, or the slaves that we intend for them to be, and that our masters are expecting for us to produce. My mother used to say that we should bend the tree when it is young, for when it gets old, it will be much too strong and hard, if not impossible, to bend. The children psychologists continue by saying, and I quote, the years between 6 and 14, which is middle childhood and early adolescence, are a time of important developmental advances that establish children's sense of identity. During these years, children make strides towards adulthood by becoming competent, independent, self-aware, and involved in the world beyond their families. Unquote. Just allow me to stay on this point for one moment. And in so doing, I will point out a few of what I perceive to be some basic but indisputable facts. Train up a child in the way that he or she should go, and when he or she is old, he or she will not, or he or she may not depart from it, or direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they may not leave it. Fact number 1. Train up a child or bring up your child in the way that he or she should go. From my perspective, correlates with Desiderata. Go placidly amid the noise and haste. Fact number 2. Before I give you fact number 2, please let me take time out here and briefly explain another basic fact that is unknown to many and that is also taken for granted by some of those who may know it, and is used by others who know it to exploit the ignorance of those that don't know it. And that fact is that there is a significant difference between that which is normal and that which is natural. Simply put, normal is not natural, and natural is not normal. Therefore, not just because we may loosely say, or we may hear others loosely say that something or someone is normal, means that that something or that someone is natural. Normal, or that which is normal, or that which is considered normal, is in accordance to the state or the condition, the common standards, the parameters, the established order, aka the laws of mankind, the humankind, the unnatural ones, aka the artificial ones, and the unnatural source, etc. While natural is in accordance to the state, the condition, the immutable natural laws of Ashe, our source, and Mother Nature. And by our source, I mean we, the natural, native, earthly humans. We, the Earth's organic and highly melanin and carbon-enriched humans, aka the natural ones, also commonly called Africans. And so with this knowledge, understanding, understanding, and overstanding, please let me continue. Under natural circumstances, and please note that I say natural circumstances and not normal circumstances, the rearing, nurturing, and training of a natural child, our natural children, as affirmed by Mother Nature's law, and also by logic and basic activated common sense, is and should be the sole responsibility of the natural mother. and the natural father of that natural child or of those natural children. And should that responsibility be attempted to be carried out by anyone else or by anything else other than the natural mother and the natural father of that natural child or of those natural children, then the production of a wholesome natural child or some wholesome natural children is not guaranteed and cannot be guaranteed. In other words, it is not the responsibility of a grandmother, a sister, a brother, a niece or relative, a stranger, a nanny, the government, aka the state, or the television, the notepad, the notebook, the computer, the cell phone, or technology, you name it, or you name them, to train or to bring up a child in the way that he or she must grow and go. Naturally, the fact is that it is not their responsibility to train our children and to direct them on the right path. The fact remains that it is not their responsibility to rear our offspring and guarantee a wholesome child or some wholesome children. Now, if I am correct, then we don't have to look any further in order to understand why the world and our children are in the mess that we are all in today. Fact number 3. If or when we the parents, meaning the fathers and the mothers, aka, or rather, if or when we the parents, meaning fathers and mothers, are broken, then it is extremely difficult, if not totally impossible, for us to rear, to bring up, to train, and produce wholesome children. Meaning, if we are broken mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, morally, ethically, and even financially, etc., then we must be honest and admit that it is extremely difficult, if not totally impossible, for us to rear or to bring up, to train and produce wholesome children. Children without any scars, blemishes, and issues from our own brokenness. My interpretation and understanding of this quote: train up a child in the way that he or she should grow, and when he or she is old, he or she may not depart from it. Or direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they may not leave it. Is that we as parents, meaning literally biological mothers and fathers, and biological fathers, the two parents are the two people that Mother Nature brought together biologically to conceive the child or to conceive the children, should or must rear them, or must rear, nurture, and train them properly so that when they grow old or when they become adults themselves, they may not depart from the right path, the moral values, the virtues, the moral code of conduct, the upright and outstanding character and qualities that we, their parents, have passed on to them and have instilled in them. According to the late Dr. Dorothy Laws, or Dorothy Law, Director of Philosophy, or rather Doctor of Philosophy, in her poem titled "Children Learn What They Live," and I quote, "Children learn what they live." In other words, and as the saying goes, what monkeys see, monkey do. And in this case, what our children see, our children do. Meaning, our children learn from us, their parents and adults, by literally imitating us. Now, this is the end of part 3 of this my series of presentation titled "The Art of Living Well, Another Perspective and Interpretation of Desiderata." And I thank you for listening thus far. Please join me in part 4 for the continuation and much more detailed expressions on this topic, the art of living well. another perspective and interpretation of Desiderata. I am the Mystic Philosopher. It is high time for reason and for reasoning. Ashe, 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 I say.